to the After Sunday podcast here at Door of Hope, where we dig in a bit deeper and have a discussion about our sermon series. And we're here today to talk about our sermon series, The Good Life. And we've got Isaac and Melissa and Toby, and I'm Ben, and we're going to have a conversation about what we're learning through this series and how it's going for us. So guys, maybe by way of summary, we've been talking about the good life that Jesus came to give us, where it says in John 10:10 that he came to give us an abundant life, a rich and satisfying life. But we've been talking about how the world sees that kind of life in one way, but God's picture of that life is different. And in order to kind of get from the world's idea of that good life to God's idea of that good life, one of the most effective ways we can do that is actually by being generous and giving away not just our possessions and money, but actually our dreams and our hopes and our desires and our plans, surrendering all of that to God and allowing Him to provide everything that we need. And that He actually then provides not only what we need, but actually He provides enough for us to be generous to others. And that is living the good life, where He provides enough for us and enough to give away as well. And so that's what we've been talking about over a few weeks already. And so my first question really to us to throw out is maybe what is the one thing that you think God has been kind of highlighting to you? It's stood out to you, it's kind of stuck in your mind. It might be a particular point, it might be a particular verse, it might be just a particular, even a challenge to you personally, or something that you haven't thought about yet, or maybe even just a reminder of something that maybe you already knew, but maybe it's been a bit of a while and you needed that kind of kick up the pants to kind of be reconfronted with it. So what has it been for you, Tobes? Do you have...
Yeah, I think for myself, one of the biggest things has been reflecting on 2 Corinthians and how God loves a joyful giver, and using that as potentially even a space as a metric to kind of share with knowing God's heart is that we are generous, that He has asked us to be part of, that He wants us to have this good life, and that generosity is, clearly at the center of it. That's not even should I be generous, should I give, should I not give, as sort of that metric, but when I give, am I being joyous in this space? Is there something that I can go to? And the reason I'm kind of saying that is because I remember talking with my wife, and we were thinking about, okay, where should we give? What should we give? And I was like, hey, I think it would be great if we could, put some money here. And she freaked out and was stressed and overwhelmed. And then I was like, okay. And then God reminded me of that verse even before, we had been talking about it really. And I was like, well, clearly you're not joyous, and it would feel under compulsion or under stress or overwhelmed, so maybe not there. And then we discussed, and she was like, but how about here? After some thought and prayer, maybe we could, give some money in this area. And it both kind of felt right in our heart. We were kind of like, yeah, this is exciting. This is where we think it would be a better opportunity to give. And so it wasn't that we were like, right, we're not going to give it all, but all right, where else is there joy in our heart that we can give, that we can be more joyful about, that God's clearly in, that we can walk in that way and experience that good life.
Yeah, well, so you kind of, that's cool. You use the joy of that cheerful giving as almost an indicator as to where God might be leading you to give as well, that's really cool. Yeah. Nice. What about you guys? What about Isaac?
I think it's the point that you brought up, Ben, but I guess the idea of we tithe, and we talk about we give 10% to the church, but the idea that everything that we have is actually the Lord's. And I think it's reframed my thinking around especially money and stuff. It's like I get my pay come in every fortnight, and it's like, okay, 10%'s going back to the church, and not just thinking that's what's for God, but everything I've got's for God, and everything that I get is for God, and not just money, but my possessions, my time, my focus. Everything I have is actually the Lord's, and trying to think about how I can be generous, not just with money, but with time and energy and that kind of thing is, I've had a lot of done lots of thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a really important way to reframe it, isn't it? Like Sandy talked about how we are caretakers,
Yeah.
and God gives us things, but they're for us to kind of take care of and to use well for His kingdom, not necessarily all just for us to use on ourselves and to just have a nice, comfortable life. But like you say, the importance of viewing what God has given us through that lens completely changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like, and I've heard stories in throughout the series of people who have kind of maybe had second thoughts about purchasing a really expensive piece of clothing or even not an expensive thing, but they literally got to the checkout of something and they went, oh, actually, do I really need this? Is this really something that God kind of wanted me to spend this money on right now? And they kind of felt, oh, actually, no, I don't think it is. I think I'm only buying it because I like the look of it or whatever. And so I've heard stories of people, like just in everyday life as well, just starting to reframe. And it doesn't mean we have to like literally go without anything and give everything away but it's just a different way of thinking, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What am I using these resources that God has placed in my hands for, and are they all for me, or is actually some of it for other people? Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Melissa, what stood out to you so far?
Interestingly, I think it's a combination of the joy that Toby was talking about and what Isaac was talking about, of everything belonging to God first. And I love generosity. It's a high value in our family. And I remember after one of the series, the sermons, I was just sort of like asking God, like, why? Like, why do I find so much joy in being generous? And God sort of gave me this like sentence that generosity is the opportunity to participate in the outworking of God's love. And I was like, that's it. Because
Very good.
my favorite thing is when there's a story of where God spoke to me, and I can share that with someone. Like they'd say, oh, like how, like there's this lady that I will often give bread to, and she's like, how did you know I forgot bread today? Or like, she's like, every time you bring it. And I am able to say, well, I was praying, who's that for? And He gives me your name. And so it's that ability to connect generosity with God and to share with people that I'm just the vessel that God is using to say, I love you and I'm thinking about you and this is for you.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? And we asked that question, what if the answer to someone's prayer for provision is actually our willingness and readiness to share with that person?
Yeah.
And we can be the answer to their prayers in a way. God can use us to supply for somebody else. And that's really cool.
We have a brand new segment here on the After Sundays podcast. We're calling it the Cutting Room Floor.
Yeah.
And Ben, you have been part of this series in the preaching.
Yes.
You have done 4 messages, 3 separate messages. But I know in conversations in the lead up to this, you were saying that there's so much more you could talk about. And we have this opportunity now to talk about it. So what are some of the things in your messages that, 1, you said that you'd share on the podcast, but 2, things that you were really wanting to sharing but had to cut for time, or because the messages were growing big, or because you didn't want to step on other speakers' toes? What are some of the stuff that's on the cutting room floor that you can pick up and share with us now?
Yeah, thanks. Well, 2 things I had. Those people maybe who have been with us the last couple of weeks and following along our sermons might have eagle eyes, and they may have noticed that on Sunday we spoke about 2 Corinthians chapter 9, and we looked at verses 6 and verses 7 and verses 8 and verse 10.
Ooh.
But we skipped verse 9, and that's because I ran out of time and I couldn't fit it all in. So it's really cool to have that opportunity to fill that gap in. Verse 9 is actually Paul. So he's in the context of the passage. He's talking about this idea, a picture of farming and agriculture. Sowing seeds, sowing and reaping, and that God provides bread for food, and seeds for sowing. And so it's this kind of picture of sowing, right? And in verse 9, he actually quotes a psalm, Psalm 112. It says, "They have freely scattered their gifts to the poor. Their righteousness endures forever. Their horn will be lifted high in honor." And Paul's talking about this idea, painting the picture of a farmer and sowing seeds and reaping what he sows, and that God provides the seed for sowing. And then in the middle of it, he quotes this psalm, and it's kind of like painting this picture of a farmer with like a bag of seed around his shoulder, and he's walking along on the soil and just kind of taking handfuls and just kind of really scattering it wherever. Rather than someone who's like taking one seed at a time and carefully planting in the very specific spots for very specific reasons. And I think, and the psalmist says that the righteous person sows their seed and gives to the poor in that way. Mm-hmm. And the reward is that they will be lifted high in honor. And that's like in the context of our series and what we're talking about. We can see that as the reward being that our lived experience of what the good life is that Jesus came to give us is kind of that reward. And so Paul is kind of saying, let's be generous, but like let's be generous in our generosity and scatter freely. Yeah. And maybe we've talked about how maybe sometimes we're a bit too, we overthink our generosity a bit, and we're maybe a little bit too careful. We're analysing, is this the best place to put our money, and what will they do with that money if I give it to them, or how will this get the best return, or et cetera, and there is wisdom that needs to be kind of had and used a lot of the time, and there are some strategies to giving where you can perhaps reap more than what you would have if you were just kind of being kind of just scattering, but too often I think we go far too on that end of the spectrum, and Paul is calling us to a far more liberal scattering of our generosity, where we kind of are just generous for the sake of being generous, no strings attached, where we're not kind of overthinking it too much. I think the problem that sometimes we have with overthinking is because we're trying to have too much control over what's happening. Underlying deep down, even if we're not thinking in that way, we want to have control over what happens. Yeah. Where we want to see a certain result of our giving, or we don't want to give up control over what happens with that after we've let go of it. And so we're very careful about where it goes because we want to see a particular outcome. But really, Paul is calling us to a generosity that just gives, and lets God control what happens with the seed after it's been sown. We just sow it, and then see what God does with it, rather than us trying to control the outcome all the time. So cool. That was one of the big chunks that we had to leave out. And the other one, which we kind of hinted that we would talk about in the podcast, was this idea of structures for giving. And we talked about how not everyone's the same, but a lot of us benefit from processes, structures in our life that will make it more likely that we can be generous. Because for most of us, it's not like a natural default setting. Some of us it is, and we've got that, they have that gift, but certainly not for me, and probably for the most of us, probably not. And so we really find structures and processes helpful. So some of the structures that I've heard about, and some of them I've practiced myself and seen, there's a few that I've got here. One we talked about in the series, Sandy mentioned this, and I referred to this a little bit too, is just having cash ready. These days, we don't have cash very often. Yeah. I don't know about you, I don't. And so when an opportunity presents itself to be spontaneously generous to someone, quite often we're not prepared for that. That was never an issue up until about probably 15 years ago, really.
Yeah.
Now it's an issue
Yeah.
because not many of us carry around cash, actual cash, and we can't literally just give something straight away if that's required. So one structure we can have is simply to make sure we always have a $10 note or a $20 note or something in our wallet, purse, phone, case, whatever it is that we carry around with us, so that we're ready to share, which is one of the themes that we've picked up in the series. Another one is a generosity account, and I know quite a few people that have this, where they set up a dedicated bank account in their kind of ecosystem of accounts and stuff, where the money that's in that is purely for giving away to others and not to use on themselves or on bills or anything like that. The important thing with that, I found, is that you have a way to make sure it's always topped up. That there's something something that you've set up that always puts it in. So some people have decided to put maybe a percentage of their income, like they would a tithe or something like that, but they would dedicate 1% or 0.5% or whatever it is, and you kind of set a regular input into a generosity account for others. Other people, maybe you've got like a hobby that you earn money from occasionally, that maybe is just something you love to do and you don't really do it for the money, but you happen to get paid for it sometimes. And so I know people who have chosen to just give all that money away because they don't really rely on it. It's just extra. And so that goes into the generosity account. I know people who put parts of their tax return or bonuses from work or birthday money or like extra money that they weren't expecting, maybe goes into a generosity account, or some sort of commitment that account regularly gets topped up, so that then we're ready to share, that we've always got something there when the time comes. So that's another one. An interesting one is called a graduated tithe, and we talked about how a tithe is 10%. A graduated tithe is basically a commitment to grow that every year from 10%. And so a lot of people who do this, for instance, just add 1% every year. So this year they might be giving away 10%. Next year they choose to give away 11%, and the following year 12%, etc. And that's not all giving it to the church, but that's the way that they grow their margin. Gradually over time, they decide that they're going to give away a little bit more every year from what they earn, give away to others in one way or another. So that's a graduated tithe. A capped budget is another interesting one that I've heard of, where people essentially work out what they need to live in a year, for instance, and what they need to pay all the bills, what they need to provide food for the family, and not just survive, but actually there's margin there to enjoy life and to do nice things and have treats every now and again and all that. But they work that out, and then as their income grows, they stick to that original one, and anything extra that they start as their income grows, they choose to give away any extra. And so that's like a capped budget, and I see that as like working directly with this 2 Corinthians 9 verse when it says God gives bread for food and seed for sowing. It's like essentially it's working out what's my bread and what's my seed. And I'm going to keep my bread for food, and I'm going to keep my seed for sowing, and I'm going to keep them separately and work that out. And as we go through the years, hopefully that becomes more and more and more. So that's a capped budget. And then another one is a reverse tithe, which some people choose to live on 10% of what they get, what comes in, and give away 90%.
That's wow.
Which is inspiring, right? Like, it's incredible. But there are people that choose to do that as well and to live a really generous life. And it's a life of simplicity. It's a life of contentment, as you can imagine, because the temptation to spend more or to upscale life in whatever way would be great, but they choose to just live simply and live on the bare minimum and then give a large portion of the rest away. So there's some structures that we know of. There's there's others as well. I don't know if any of you have heard of more or do something slightly differently in your life, but there's some that inspire me and give me some ideas, and a couple of those we practice as a family and really benefit from, and it helps us to be intentional about our generosity and not kind of rely on our hopefully our natural kind of lives just to go in that direction, but actually to force it in that direction in a way, which has been helpful to us.
Yeah, awesome. I think this leads really nicely into hearing about some stories. And I know that Isaac and Mel especially are two of the most generous people that I do know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That generosity just flows out of them. So I would love to hear from you guys about, stories where you've been generous, or if you've been able to use some of these things that Ben's been chatting about, or if you have your own kind of rhythms or your own kind of, focuses that kind of help when you're being generous, that it's just, you're like, this is what we do.
So good. Well, one of the structures you talked about, I recently redid how I do my budgeting and bank accounts and stuff. And one of the more important things for me when I was doing that was making sure I had an account for generosity. And I think I can be a very generous person, but since setting it up, I've just had lots of thoughts of trying to be intentional about how I see generosity. And is it, do I go out and spend the $10, $15 to buy someone Macca's after youth on a Friday night, or do I be intentional and say, if I hold off on that, can I be more generous somewhere else later on when more money comes into that account? So that's been another great thing with this series coming around this time, is trying to be intentional about where I'm generous. And one of my love languages is gifts, and it's not so much me receiving, but I love being generous to other people. And it's always been a thing for me, whether when I started making money and I didn't have a whole lot, it was always I want to be generous and help people out, because it really pained me to see people missing out on stuff because they couldn't afford it. So it was always I want to go out and be generous in these kind of ways. And I think as I've grown up and matured a bit, it's okay, how can I actually be more intentional and show love and support to the people around me with my generosity? So
that's awesome. Yeah. I don't know about you, but having a generosity account, it's almost like a tangible way to say that money's not mine.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's actually heaps of fun, I find, to work out how to give that away.
Yeah.
And it feels so good because I've got no attachment to it personally, because I've committed that it's not paying my bills, it's not going to buy me groceries, it's not going to whatever. And so I have so much joy and fun just figuring out how to give that away, and it's cool.
Yeah. And it's since I've set it up, it's meant my generosity has been a lot more prayer focused as well, where I'm okay, I've actually got this set amount of money that's coming into this account every fortnight. And not just thinking, okay, if something comes up really quick and spontaneously, I'll help pay for it, but praying, God, how do you want me to use this money? And you gave us the homework a couple of weeks ago, Ben, of how are you going to be generous this week? And it was a bit of a struggle because I was on youth camp, so it was how am I going to be generous here? So I just took those opportunities to actually just pray into how does God want to use this money that I've set aside. And I haven't done anything with it yet, but being prepared for when God needs to use it and how God wants to use it has been really important to me. So
That's great. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you, Melissa?
I like what you said about the verse 9. And I think it ties in really well with that idea of building your muscle. And so I've actually found generosity is a really core value of mine, but I didn't realize it because it's just there, grown up in a family that was very generous. but I actually I still had to grow that muscle of like how God had wanted me to be generous. And I'm probably like one of those more like, I was going to say oddball people, but like where we're just, it's very prompted. Like I've learned to just respond to the promptings of the Holy Spirit. And that's where I've had to grow that muscle in actually responding to the promptings. And so an example would be when we started opening up our house to people coming over for meals, or giving away like baking or food to people. And, you know, you kind of like, you open up your house once and that's really scary, and then it's a really positive experience. And so then you just, you do it again, and being able to invite the kids into that space. And so now often when I bake something, there's that question is like, who's that for? Because they know that we give away. And then they've started going, well, actually, can we give it to that person? And can we give it to that person? And yeah, but you have to grow, you have to practice, you have to step out in faith. And there's never been a time where we've actually lacked because we've given. And even recently, I was baking cookies for actually about 3 different people we had in mind to give them away to. And then we got some eggs through church. And so we, like one of the most expensive ingredients, and God was like, I got you. And it was just beautiful to see God's provision in that.
He provides bread for food.
Yes.
Seeds for sowing and eggs for cookies.
That's right.
Amen.
Yeah, awesome.
So good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the chatting today. Thanks for the discussion. It's been really good, really rich. And hopefully it's been helpful for everyone listening as well. We have one more week of this series to go, so we're really looking forward to hearing what how Christy is going to contribute and what she's got to say and how to wrap up this series. But really to encourage people, if you want to dive into this even further, even more, for this series, for the content and the writing of this series, we've been really inspired by a few resources that are available. One is a book called Giving is the Good Life by Randy Alcorn. It's a great book and available in our church library for those who call Door of Hope their home, but otherwise available on all the usual places. And also by the Generosity Practice, Practicing the Way. And that's available on YouTube for free and everything as well. So check them out if you want to know more. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate your discussion today. It's been so cool. And hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thanks so much. Don't forget to subscribe if you like it and share it around. But we'll see you next time. Thanks.